Test this, you fucking quack.
Good evening, world, and welcome to another episode of A24 Vibe Discussions. I'm your host, Kevin K. Konachek. And for this cinematic journey, we are jumping into our time machine and blasting off to the year 2000. Was Christopher Nolan's second feature film, the movie that many argue launched his now illustrious career, the psychological thriller Memento. But I'm not alone. Oh, no, I need some drinking buddies. Because if we're going to talk about this film, holy shit. Because if I needed a drink while watching it, I certainly am going to need one to review it. So for this one, I'm drinking a Japanese whiskey, Nikka straight from the barrel, which is just way too bougie for this occasion, but I don't care. I really needed a good whiskey for this really good film. So drinking buddies, who are you? Introduce yourselves. Tell me what you're drinking.
What's up? I'm Eric, and I'm drinking a Pinot Grigio. I went to the store, and I seemingly can't remember what kind of Pinot Grigio I bought. Did I buy a Pinot Grigio? Am I actually drinking wine? Who put this wine glass in front of me? I don't know.
Do you have any tattoos that tell you?
I do have one, but it's just the dick butt meme, and it's on my foot.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's fine. Hi, Eric. Thanks for being here.
Hey, guys. It's Cole Willie Gibson. I'm currently back in the wonderful city of Savannah, Georgia, and I am trying to forget everything that happened here, so I am just pounding vodka Red Bulls and hoping to lose some memories tonight.
Wow. I think we're all off on just such a great start for this occasion.
A24 Vibe Discussion.
So our audience may be asking themselves, why are we reviewing Memento? That's not A24. Well, you're correct. Good job. But as this is an A24 Vibe discussion, we don't have to be reviewing an A24 film, so nah. But Mr. Nolan has been in the news a whole bunch recently with the wide-ranging success of Oppenheimer, and we decided that if A24 was around in the year 2000, Memento would be right in their wheelhouse. The writing is brilliant, the themes are complex, the storytelling compelling, and the indie nature of it being early in Nolan's career had us interested in cracking some beverages and discussing it. So here we are, 24 years later, still talking about this film. So guys, how many times have you each now seen Memento? I assume this is not your first watching, being the movie aficionados that you both are. Eric, what do you think? Start me out.
Second time. I believe the first time I saw it was in high school, so very long ago. I graduated in 2009, so that would make it at least 15 years ago. So yeah, I just remember the conflicting timelines of this movie. I remember the actors like Carrie-Anne Moss, Joe Pantoliano.
Well, I'm going to screw it up too. So.
Yeah, and Guy Pearce. Yeah, I remember all these actors, and also how great they were at this time. Like especially Joe Pantoliano. He was in The Sopranos. Carrie-Anne Moss, The Matrix. Guy Pearce also in an A24 film, The Rover. About a man who lost his dog, and he was that man. So a lot of great actors in here.
What about you, Cole? How many times have you seen Memento before viewing it for this lovely podcast?
I believe this is also my second time. Probably the first time where I've truly sat down to watch it. I think the first time I watched it was probably freshman year of high school with some buddies just hanging out. So don't really remember too much about it, but remember it being good and remember it being weird. So I was excited to get back into it.
Well, as our audience probably can guess, as I'm not too much of a movie guy, I had no idea about this film. Not even a little bit. Maybe I had heard it in passing, maybe just a conversation, but I tell my wife I'm about to review Memento. She's like, oh, I wrote a paper about that in college, and I have the DVD copy and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm completely left out in the world of
physical
not
media. Woo!
About
2 points
this.
for your wife.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But then I turned around and watched it on Amazon Video last night.
Oh,
so, yeah, had the DVD and then didn't even use it.
It's for free on Peacock, too.
Yeah, well, I use Amazon for anything. My point is, here I was last night having no fucking clue what I was about to get myself into and was treated to this ridiculousness. So you two have the unique experience of already having seen it, watching it a second time, which we'll get to it a little bit, but this movie is definitely intended to be watched more than once. And now here I am only having seen it once, and now I have to prepare all this bullshit without being able to watch it again. So you guys suck, but I wish I had seen it earlier. But I want to ask, how was this second time different for both of you? How was the viewing different, and how did you know, how was your perspective changed while getting ready for this particular movie review, having already had seen the film? Cole, you first this time.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing it for the first time, you kind of understand how the story unfolds, and so you start to pay more attention to, I guess, how the story is presented with, like, the cinematography and some of the hard cuts, and then you look for those subtle nuances of clues of things of that kind of eventually, you know, open up the ending and kind of the full story and stuff. So I think it's definitely it's a very enjoyable first watch, but I think it's a lot of fun to watch it a second time because you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, but now you can really dive deep into it and see some of the really cool stuff that they did in this film, and some of the stuff that, you know, that pushes a good movie to a great movie. Like, I feel like there's tons of good movies, but the movies that are great do all of the small stuff. Like, you know, I always talk about the QC in films and how, you know, there's all these small stuff that they miss, and I feel like that's what makes a movie great, is when they do all those and they kind of all culminate in something really cool.
I like that you said it kind of opened up the ending, or it opened up the explanations a little bit. And I can certainly imagine my second viewing of this film will open up a little bit more, especially with the way that the linear fashion of this film. But Eric, same question to you. How was your viewing different this second time?
I would say it was just like viewing it the first time because I watched it so long ago, and I knew there was, you know, conflicting timelines and everything. But since I'm an older person, like, watching this now, I think that I understand it more, because I think I just understand more about Christopher Nolan, his conflicting timelines, his style of filmmaking, and, you know, films like Inception and Tenet, he always places little things in the film that might mean something more, and he always tries to leave it open-ended for the audience. So I would say just kind of my knowledge of film has grown, and so I probably received this film differently this time than I did in high school.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about that. I was more thinking of, like, the ideas of, like, the actual timeline, but like you said, the idea of having Nolan as a director and having all this body of work after the fact certainly would change how you view it. So that's actually a really cool point. I'm glad you brought that up. But I do want to talk about the unique narrative structure, right? Because this film is certainly well known for its nonsensical, crackpot, insane off-the-wall timeline. And I'll say that because going into it having no idea and then coming out the other side being like, what the hell did I just watch? And now having been able to digest it, it's been insane. Like I said, this film is known for that unique structure, which is presented in a nonlinear fashion, playing with that concept of short-term memory loss. Nolan was asked about this intent in an interview, and he said he attempted to deny the audience the same information that the protagonist is denied. That way, when the audience meets new characters we don't know, like the protagonist, we are asking who that person is and should they be trusted. So, Eric, what do you think about that quote? Do you know, did you have that feeling when watching it, and kind of did you put yourself in the shoes of someone who maybe didn't know what was going on when you got into those scenes?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely was questioning everybody around me. I was like, okay, what Lenny has written down, tattooed on him, it should be taken as fact. And obviously, as we go on, we realize we might have an unreliable narrator. Watching this again, with, I guess, wider eyes, I realized that Nolan was kind of setting us up for a twist for sure. But also, like, yeah, the black and white scenes, that is going forward, and the color scenes are going backwards. And so I actually wasn't too confused about the timeline. I just felt like when I started, every color scene ended with the start of the last one. So I realized, okay, it's just going back in time chronologically, and so that's what I have to take as fact too. But yeah, this film has a whole lot of unreliable information and narration.
Cole, same question to you regarding the timeline. What was kind of your takeaway from Nolan's approach with this timeline? And as Eric alluded to, having these two parallel storylines, one in color and one in black and white, just kind of your thoughts on that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm usually pretty critical of films and how they do their timelines, especially when they do so many cuts and so many different kind of story paths, and this one is definitely unique with the backwards and the forwards. But something about the way Christopher Nolan pieced this together. I feel like it's a very easy film to like watch and understand. You might not know what's going to happen next, and you might not fully comprehend the big picture, but it's I think piecemealed in a way that you see how it's going, and you can follow along. And I think he does an excellent job on that. And I think the thing about this film and why it succeeds is it's not trying to do something massive, not trying to have 20 different storylines. It's not trying to do a story about stopping the end of the world or something crazy. It's very grounded. It's following the story of this one guy. You keep the world small, you keep the stakes small, and you keep the story precise, and that's exactly what Christopher Nolan did. And then he took a very unique cinematic and like storytelling approach and applied it like masterfully.
I think around this time, can I say something? Around this time, people were experimenting more with conflicting timelines and everything. I think Pulp Fiction wasn't that long. It was like 6 years before this film. And so I think a lot of filmmakers were trying to mess with timelines and storytelling a little bit more. And I think we get a little bit more suspense because of these conflicting timelines. I think it makes you look at the story a whole different way than you would a normal story. So. Yeah.
And I think if I read it correctly, he wrote the script for this movie in a linear timeline, but he was also writing the script while his brother was writing the short story that the script was based off of. So they were sending each other notes back and forth from the East to the West Coast while both developing this piece of art. And then he pieced it back together the way he filmed it, which I just think was brilliant. So I guess I should clarify the reason that I felt it was crackpot or off the wall or whatever confusing is my brain probably didn't appreciate it too much just because it doesn't like being jumped all over the place, even though, like Eric said, it does follow a linear one, even though it's going backwards. So I very much empathized with Guy Pearce's character in the sense that I really felt completely confused every time I got put into a new scene. So Nolan got me good, I guess, is what I could say. I was the perfect candidate for what he was trying to achieve when he wrote this film or directed, created this film, because I truly felt uncomfortable. I wanted to know more, and as soon as the film ended, I wanted to start it over and watch it again. I've actually gone to the point now where I've found a couple YouTube videos that piece together all the timelines and put them in chronological order, and I've watched that now in order to kind of see the way things are a little bit more from a linear storytelling standpoint, which is wild too, and it brings a whole different perspective too, from the perspective of he had a choice, right? Leonard has a choice to go and do on what he does. But I think we're getting a little bit too far into it here. So let's talk about the plot just a little bit, although it's a little hard to dive into this plot, seeing as it's kind of backwards and there's two different sides to it. But our protagonist, Leonard Shelby, played by Guy Pearce, suffers from a short-term memory loss or anterograde amnesia due to a traumatic incident. Leonard is determined to find and avenge the murderer of his wife. However, because of his condition, he can't form new memories and relies on Polaroid photographs, notes, and tattoos to keep track of the information. As Leonard interacts with various characters, including Natalie, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, and Teddy, played by Joe Pantoliano. That's my attempt at it. The audience is kept in suspense about the true nature of the characters and the events. So let's talk about Guy Pearce a little bit. Eric, you mentioned earlier that he was indeed in The Rover, which is a previous A24 film, and Cole famously loves that film. He's a big stan for it. So, Cole, I want you to fawn over Guy Pearce for a little bit. Tell me why he was a better choice than Brad Pitt for this role, because Brad Pitt was also widely considered to play Leonard's character, and just what you thought about his performance and the character in general.
It's hard to say Brad Pitt wouldn't do a good job at this because he's coming off of Fight Club, because Fight Club came out in 99, right? And this came out in 2000.
98, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh no, 9. You're right. Yep. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So Brad Pitt definitely kind of fits the mold, but I think they did I think it was better to not have Brad Pitt the star as this kind of faceless man that you don't know his whole story, and he doesn't know really who he is. I mean, not to say that Guy Pearce isn't, a well-known actor, but he's not the superstar of Brad Pitt, right? And I think that tends to detract sometimes from the storytelling when the actor is maybe too high profile for essentially a man who barely knows who he is, and he's trying to go off of what everyone else's thoughts and opinions of him are. So I mean, Guy Pearce did a phenomenal job. I mean, I don't think you could have done a better job, and I don't think Brad Pitt would have added anything besides notoriety. So, and honestly, I think Christopher Nolan maybe just hates Brad Pitt. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. So let's start a beef.
All right, Eric, same question. What do we think about Guy Pearce and Leonard's character in general?
Yeah, I agree with Cole that I think Nolan did go with Guy Pearce because he was a little bit less of a celebrity. And, I mean, Brad Pitt is a great actor, especially, I think, these kind of roles, too. He does kind of shine. But I think Guy Pearce did just as good of a job as Brad Pitt could have done. And I enjoy that he was more of a faceless man, like we know him now, but at the time, I bet you we probably didn't know him as much. As far as Leonard as a character, we literally don't have much personality for him. We don't know who he is. We just know he's a man with he is on a quest for vengeance, and that is all that consumes his life, and obviously his memory loss. So I would say that vengeance is his personality. It consumes all of him, and I think that's a big theme of the film too.
Absolutely. And for my part, I would agree that both of your sentiments about Brad Pitt, although it's very odd because the moment that I saw the first close-up of Guy Pearce, the first thing I thought of was Brad Pitt in Fight Club because of the way that they framed the shot, the blonde piercing hair, just like the squareness of his jaw, like everything. I was like, wait a minute, that could be Brad Pitt, but it wasn't. So I completely understand why he was considered for that role. But I do think that there's something to be said about an unknown playing an unknown character. You guys nailed it right on the head. He is that faceless man, although I would argue that his character kind of gets a little bit more of an in-depth feeling for me as I kind of break it down a little bit more. And I say that because I feel like the choices that Leonard has in this film to ignore some of the things that he's done show that he's, while suffering from this major debilitating memory loss, still is making choices to continue this perpetual cycle by, burning pictures of the victims that he's had or making the choices to go after a new John G. He's making the decision to perpetuate this cycle over and over again, which I find to be very intriguing, we'll say, about the character. Especially with his interactions with our other characters, which we're going to get into right now. So let's talk about Natalie, played by Carrie-Anne Moss. What did we think about her performance, and was she a sympathetic character? What kind of stood out about her performance in general? And Eric, this film has been noted as a noir film noir, a neo-film noir. Is Natalie a femme fatale?
I wouldn't put her in the normal femme fatale role. I definitely think she is devious, and I was like second guessing her this whole time. I really like Carrie-Anne Moss, especially like watching her in The Matrix and everything. The noir aspects I get from this film are the style of filmmaking, and then we do have a detective as our. He's not even technically a detective, but a guy that is trying to figure out a case, basically, as our centerpiece. And I definitely think Nolan, like the kind of camera shots and the lighting he used, definitely led into film noir. But I think Natalie is much more than a femme fatale. I think she might be a key manipulator of Leonard throughout this whole thing. That's for later. But I really think her character was really well done in this film, and I like the twist we eventually get of her too. So, yep.
All right, Cole, same question to you. Tell me a little about Natalie and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta love Carrie-Anne Moss from The Matrix. Always been a big fan of her since I first saw The Matrix. But I think her character is they do such a good job writing her character, and she does, I think, an extremely solid job of bringing that character to life in the film. And like I would say the one scene that really, I think, really shows her acting chops and shows kind of the complexity of her character is the kind of the scene where it first starts to, where it really like unfolds that she might not be a good person or the best person. And like her and Leonard are getting into an argument, and she's asking, I think it's when she's asking him to kill someone for her, and he's telling her he's not going to do that, not going to do that. And they get into like an altercation, and he ends up, I think, like hitting her, shoving her, whatnot. And she walks around and takes every single pen, and then basically walks outside and sits in her car for 5 to 10 minutes and comes back in and brings a whole new story and manipulates Leonard and uses his lack of memory against him. And I just thought that scene was awesome. I thought that like was such a good scene, and she did such a fantastic job in that scene. So
I do want to say one more thing on the femme fatale angle. I guess, like, traditionally, femme fatales are known to be seductive and to kind of, like, lead men into traps through their seduction. And I think in this case, it's just her leading him into a trap because of his lack of memory. I think Leonard is still fully ensnared by his previous lover, who, you know, his wife, and that's all he cares about. I mean, I guess there is, like, a scene where they did end up sleeping together, but I'm not sure that she falls into the typical femme fatale, but maybe she still is, because I guess she is like a villain and is conning and kind of playing puppet master almost to Leonard. But like I feel like in the classic case of femme fatales, it's more because this character is usually sexualized or something, and then
Fair.
like they seduce them.
I suppose
so, yeah.
I mentioned it mostly because this film is oftentimes referred to, as I mentioned, that neo-noir style with some of the black and white and the mystery involved and some of the techniques that he used from that detective side of it. But I do understand where you're coming from. But I guess this is as good a time as any for me to make the argument why I don't think that Natalie really is that much of a manipulator, and she's truly just looking out for her own best interest. I'm not really sure how to discuss this best without kind of breaking down our plot. More or less, we've come to find out that Natalie's longtime boyfriend, Jimmy, is involved in a drug deal, right? And he's basically killed in this drug deal. And as a result, Natalie now has to go into a self-preservation mode because she's being targeted by drug dealers that think she had something to do with lots of money going bad. In order to do that, she has to convince Leonard to basically protect her. And the only way that she can find a way to do that is to get him so mad that he attacks her in order for her to use that to her advantage and eventually secure her own safety. Upon securing her safety after the Dodd character gets taken out later in the film, she then agrees to help Leonard find the real John G. and get the license plate. So, was she manipulating Leonard? Absolutely, but I truly think that she was just doing it for her own self-preservation and to make sure that she didn't die as a result of what Leonard did in the first place, which was murder her boyfriend and take $200,000 that didn't belong to him. Just my 2 cents.
I think she was manipulating him to kill Teddy because she was pissed off about her boyfriend being murdered, and Teddy essentially setting up this whole deal where Teddy was a dirty cop, and I think he was trying to get $200,000, and he didn't have any drugs or anything, but he tried to set up a drug deal to steal the money from Natalie's boyfriend, and then Leonard kills Natalie's boyfriend, and she at first was like, okay, this guy has my boyfriend's car. I don't know if he's dead yet, but something weird is going on here. Then I think she actually figures out that, yeah, he's dead, and Teddy probably set up this whole trap to get her boyfriend murdered, and then she sends Leonard after Teddy. And also, like, Leonard was already angry at Teddy, didn't trust him because of the interaction we get at the end where Teddy's just tells him, like, hey, I've been manipulating you too. But yeah,
Dodd was trying to frickin' murk him, right? Dodd was coming after him.
Dodd was her boyfriend's like coworker. I mean, not coworker, but other drug dealer in his drug gang. I'm guessing.
Drug gang.
Or not even a gang. It's probably just like some people dealing drugs out of a bar or something. But
Right.
yeah.
When $200,000 goes missing, someone's got to pay, right? Isn't that a line in the movie? Someone's always got to pay, is what Teddy says at one point or another.
I don't think it was protection though. Like, I don't know, Cole. Do you think
what's
she
your
was trying to
true
protect
sense here, bud?
herself, or?
Or do you think she was a bad guy? I think she had some good virtue to her. So
I
to be
mean,
honest with you.
I think it was kind of a combination of both. I mean, she talks about how, well, there's like the scene where someone's got to pay because Jimmy's gone and the money's gone, and either she's got it or somebody's got it, but then again, she also manipulates Leonard into doing her dirty work for him, and basically uses him to essentially kill her enemies and essentially get rid of himself as well. So it's kind of, I don't think she's a good character, and I don't think she's doing it for completely like good reasons. Like the way she goes about it, if she was truly worried about protecting herself, I think she wouldn't go through manipulating everyone to do her bidding. But at the same token, I think she also needed to get rid of the trash, so to speak, and Teddy, and maybe get a little vindication for old Jimmy.
One of Leonard's notes, she will help you because she's lost someone else and take pity on you or something along those lines. And I just thought that kind of like rung kind of true too, that there was something else to it from that perspective. Like she was, she lost someone close to her. But I don't know.
But going back to like femme fatale just means deadly or lethal woman technically in French. So yeah, maybe this is a femme fatale without like the sexualized aspect of it. Even though Carrie-Anne Moss is a very beautiful woman, but yeah.
I was about to say, come on, have you seen The Matrix?
Well, yeah, but she's not. I would say like Nolan was making her like this kind of. Let me put down my. I think
it was
hike up my skirt a little bit. Let me do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just like a very more like realistic portrayal of a normal human being, not just like hypersexualized bartender.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to talk about someone very specific right now. I want to talk about Sammy Jenkins. So Sammy Jenkins.
Oh, Sammy.
Sammy's a character that's a story that is tattooed on Leonard's hand. It says, "Remember Sammy Jenkins." And the story, kind of long and short, goes that there was this gentleman who was in a car accident, and he sustained a similar brain problem to Leonard. Now, Leonard was working as an insurance claims investigator and went to go find out if Sammy was lying about not being able to remember anything. And the story basically goes that he determined that it was psychological in nature, not physical, and that Sammy could snap out of it any time. But the deeper story is more or less that Leonard created this excuse to save his insurance company a bunch of money, and the rest may have you. So I guess I need to ask a lot of questions for you guys. Who is Sammy? Is he real? Was he a liar? Did his wife have diabetes? Who's Leonard? Who's Sammy in relation to Leonard? Why the tattoo? And everything else related to Sammy Jenkins, because this guy has a major plot point in this entire film and is kind of something that people have taken away from after the fact. So, Eric, take it away. Who is Sammy Jenkins?
I think Sammy Jenkins was Leonard. I think Leonard. So there is speculation that Leonard's actual real name is Sammy Jenkins, and that's why he has it tattooed on him. But I think the Sammy Jenkins story is just a lie he told himself, because after this crime that happened to him and his wife I think actually did live in the end, and he did get actual brain damage, didn't remember anything. And then I think his wife was the actual one that had diabetes, and then Leonard did accidentally put her into a coma because his wife got so sick of him and his brain damage, and maybe like the whole insurance thing, maybe that happened to them too. But yeah, I think Sammy Jenkins is a lie that he tells himself so that he doesn't have to remember that he actually was the one that put his own wife into a coma when she, probably manipulated him to do that. But yeah, I don't believe in the Sammy Jenkins story. I think, as he says, a lot throughout Teddy kind of says, like, we all have lies we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better. And I think that is why this story is so prominent throughout this whole film because it's the big string of lies he tells himself that also proves that he's an unreliable narrator in the end, and that, you know, we can't really trust anybody's memory.
All right, Cole, what's your theory about Sammy Jenkins? Your turn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna also have to agree. I think Sammy Jenkins is a tool that Leonard uses to change the narrative in his own mind, so he can almost forgive himself for essentially putting his wife in a coma or killing her. I think that he did get the attack and all that stuff did happen, and he had got his brain injury and amnesia, but his wife did survive, and it led them down that pathway. He talks a lot about how eyewitnesses and, you know, remembering stories and stuff are never, they always get convoluted and muddied, and if you tell yourself a lie long enough, it eventually becomes the truth. And I think that's what he's doing with the Remember Sammy Jenkins stories. I think he got that tattooed on his hand. He wrote up this story knowing that what he did when he realized it, and basically just recites it to himself daily, so that way he kind of can replace that memory, so to speak. So,
and we see he manipulates his own memory to create new enemies for himself, or maybe reasons to keep living, reasons to keep going after somebody, because that's all he has in his life now is like, okay, what's my purpose? Where do I go? And I mean, maybe that's something we all ask ourselves too. What's my purpose? Where am I going next? So
yeah, and I think he's like fallen into being like a very goal-oriented person with his like short-term memory loss. Like, he has to have a goal that he's going towards, otherwise like he has nothing to do, I guess, because like everything you do in a normal day, doesn't mean anything if you forget it every single day. And if you don't have like that overarching goal or thing driving you, you know, they always talk about people who work until they die, and then the day they retire, they also die because they like lost their purpose. And I think that's what he's afraid of, is losing his purpose, so to speak. So he's turned his trauma into his own noble pursuit.
While I agree with you guys mostly in the idea that Sammy Jenkins is fabricated, here's my take on it. I think that in Leonard's past life, he absolutely was an insurance investigator, and he probably came across somebody similar to Sammy. I think there was this scene where Teddy goes, Sammy was a liar, Sammy didn't have a wife. So I think that in the real world, Sammy probably was faking his condition. Leonard called him out, and he denied his claim. But then when Leonard's accident came around, because he had told his own insurance company, essentially, that the memory loss was psychological, not physical, they probably used maybe a similar ruling against him in that circumstance. I don't know why I felt that way, but I feel like there was just some personal connection to having to rationalize what Sammy went through and his connection to Sammy for him not to have been some sort of a real person in some way or another. I do think that Leonard's wife did have diabetes. I do think that Leonard is the one who ends up in the mental institution. I think it's very clear from that scene where we see Sammy in the home, and it flashes for a quick second, and it's Guy Pearce instead in that chair. I think that's obviously very intentional to be put in there for us to put Sammy's character in line with Leonard's character one way or another. And I think it's obviously intended that way. And I don't think that anything gets tattooed on Leonard unless it's new information that he's trying to create a story of, like you guys alluded to. So I guess a combination of both of your theories is kind of what I think. Cool?
Yeah,
cool.
I could believe that. And I also think in the end, there's still like Christopher Nolan trying to throw a wrench into the audience's heads, where they do show Leonard giving his wife the diabetes shot, but then they just cut back again and just show Leonard pinching his wife's thigh. So I think Christopher Nolan is in the end trying to be like, well, is this really all happening? And it's kind of just like Inception too. The fucking
Christopher Nolan. Let's talk about this a little bit. So directorial choices. This is one of Nolan's
whatever
earliest
still spinning.
films. He has gone on to obvious great success since this point. So what are some of those techniques, Eric? You were kind of alluding to some of those already. Some film techniques implemented in Memento that Nolan would go on to use in future projects, such as The Prestige, his Batman trilogy, Inception, Interstellar, Dunkirk, and now Oppenheimer. Cole, you answer, and Eric, both of you, whoever wants to go first. Let's talk about Christopher Nolan a little bit.
Well, I think it's obvious that Christopher Nolan loves open-ended endings, and he loves to give the audience all of the tools and information but the final answer that they want, which I think is like an art form that he has perfected with Inception, Memento, Oppenheimer. Did they really drop the bomb? You can't prove it. But no, like, yeah, Tenet too. But he loves to explore. He loves to go like deep into like kind of your mind, and you know, with Inception you go obviously into people's dreams and stuff like, and memories. Memento is all about memories. Tenet's, I don't know what that's about, but it's all over the place and crazy. And I think he does such a cool, unique storytelling almost every time he does it. I mean, Oppenheimer deals with black and white and timelines and jumping back and forth and telling things from different perspectives. So he implemented that very well. He also, my favorite thing about Christopher Nolan is his use, which this film obviously doesn't have a lot of explosions or crazy effects. But you know, his other films like Tenet and Oppenheimer and Inception all have such fantastic set pieces and such crazy over the top effects, but he does so much practical and tries to do as little CGI as possible. And I think that really adds to a lot of his films and really grounds them in reality, which, you know, obviously this film doesn't have all that, but it is still extremely grounded in reality. It doesn't feel like it's anything. I don't know. I feel like a lot of times movies that have like a story like this, they're like, look, we're going to go to New York City or Chicago, and it'll be, you know, all these crazy big cities and skyscrapers and beautiful set pieces. And this one, it's like, we're in just some podunk town with like a couple motels, nothing too crazy. Could be like any generic, like kind of Midwest, mid-sized town. I don't know. I think Christopher Nolan is such a fantastic director and definitely one of the best directors of our generation for sure, and one of the best of all time at this point. I think it's hard to say he isn't.
Eric, anything you want to add on there?
Yeah, I echo those statements, and also just like Nolan's use of conflicting timelines and nonlinear storytelling that all started here. This was its inception, but obviously as he gets a bigger budget and like gets more money to make films, I also feel he uses music way more in films nowadays. This score was kind of subtle, wasn't very loud on the soundtrack, and it was by David Julian, who also did Insomnia, which was the next film I think that Nolan did after this, and also he did Cabin in the Woods. But I think Nolan really enjoys like big sweeping scores and like large montages, especially you think about like The Dark Knight too, how many montages are in there. That was more of an actual linear storytelling, but as Nolan kind of gets more power to do what he really wants to do, it's always nonlinear storytelling, just like conflicting timelines, and then we get like these scores by like Hans Zimmer and the one that we get from Oppenheimer, and you can see his style really like in this film before he really gets the budget to make things that where he has complete creative control over everything. So super interesting to go back and watch this if you're a Nolan fan too.
Absolutely. One of my earliest films that I ever remember, like, when I say earliest, wow, this sounds really weird, but like really liking was when Inception came out. When I watched it for the first time and being like, that was film. That was something different, something really cool. And that was before I had any real idea about why Christopher Nolan was awesome. I mean, I enjoyed Batman for the sake of Batman, but that Inception was the first time I was like, man, someone can really do something different with a brain bender. And this film definitely reminded me of that. So there really wasn't a lot of surprise for me. I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense why we're kind of going after that. I liked what you had mentioned with the Oppenheimer pull together, like with the linear timelines. Like that's a big deal with this, especially even like the black and white. It seems so obvious, like that's the way we're going to do this. We're going to set a timeline apart from the other timeline by making it black and white versus color. And it just seems like it's a direct callback right to this film. Which I find just fascinating, you know, all these years later, and he's still just doing these little things that make his movies stand out in a long way. Eric, you touched on the soundtrack there, so yeah, before I get a chance to ask about it, he mentioned David Julian composed this film, had a lot of synth chords in it, distinct themes between the two different timelines, between the color and the black and white, very just unique stuff. The internet tells me that Nolan wanted a Radiohead for his ending credits, but could not secure the rights and ended up with David Bowie instead. Which, you know, you could do a lot worse than getting David Bowie for your ending, you know, credits. All right. Anything else about cinematography? Anything else specific? Directorial choices that you found particularly impactful or memorable in this film? Either of you?
One thing that I thought was such a brilliant implementation in this film was once you start realizing how the timeline is gonna go, you like the scratch on Leonard's face was like such I think a nice touch to have him with the scratch on the face, because I found myself wondering where does he get this scratch on his face? And every single scene, the moment it starts, first thing I was looking for was, does he have that scratch on his face? And like, then when you finally see it, it's like such a, I don't know, almost like a gratifying moment, but it's not even, it's so like insignificant. Maybe I've just liked the small detail, but it just felt so almost like a mini storyline, plot line in my head of just trying to find out when he's going to have that scratch. And I think that was such just a nice touch, because that's a lot of effort to put a scratch on someone's face and to redo that makeup every single day of shooting, right?
Just to age it just enough as each scene progresses in a different way to make it older and older and older as it goes on.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't some it was like that had to have been decided from basically the get-go of filming this movie, and I think that's just one of those, just another small little thing that seems so insignificant, but just adds to the fidelity of this movie, in my opinion.
So anyway, all the stuff that we're talking to, I think, is going to lend to this next question. But I stated in the opener that I thought that if A24 was around in 2000, they probably would have targeted this project and be interested in it. Do you agree, and why? Eric?
Yeah, definitely. I think that any kind of more of a mind-bending film that we get from pre-A24, you could kind of say, like, well, I could see A24 would have went for this. They would have want to distribute it. I don't think it's exactly has like that A24 aesthetic, like the lighting and the cinematography. Like, I feel A24, they always have very high quality cameras and everything. And I do think that this film, the quality of the camera might have been a little off. I wouldn't say this was like, I'm looking at 2018 Hereditary with this low of a budget too. If this was made in this day and age, though, I think that Nolan probably would have been given more, maybe more money, but like, let's say if Nolan was just starting out right now, he would have been given more tools to make this film even better. And that's, I guess, where I might knock it a little bit, but you could kind of really feel the low budget 2000s aspect of it. Nothing exactly wrong with that, but I definitely think that if it was made nowadays, it could have been made even better, and even with A24 producing or distributing it too, for sure.
Cole, what are the A24 vibes that you found in this film, and then what other movies would you compare it to in the A24 library?
I mean, like, the vibes is definitely the story and how it was kind of portrayed, and this, again, it's, I would say, the high stakes to Leonard, but not high stakes to pretty much everyone else in the world. Like, if you're outside of Leonard's bubble, this like story plays no fact on your life. So it's very small, and I think A24 does a lot of those kind of smaller, self-contained. This one isn't necessarily a slice of life, but it is kind of, has some of that small time genre feel. I think the switching between black and white and colors kind of fits in the A24 vibes and feelings. This is also, kind of Christopher Nolan's up-and-coming director, so I think A24 has been pretty good at, identifying future up-and-coming directors and kind of either getting their films or giving them some money to do a small, low-budget film like this. A24 films that this one reminds me of, besides The Rover, because they both have cars and Guy Pearce.
That's too easy.
Enemy? I think Enemy would be the big one for me.
Okay.
Conflicting timelines.
No, there you go.
Neo-noir. I definitely think that would be it.
No, you're right.
And
Enemy is definitely like,
think about like
very
the quality of Enemy 2 and like seeing it, and that's Denis Villeneuve, who just did Dune 2.
Yes.
I think that maybe Nolan, if he like made it nowadays, also like our cameras have just gotten better nowadays too. It probably would have more of that A24 aesthetic from a cinematography standpoint, but definitely the mindfuckery, conflicting timelines that reminds me of Enemy for sure.
So, Eric, you had kind of talked about the twist a little earlier in the beginning, and I haven't done a great job of following this plot too much, mostly because it feels kind of like a shame to rehash the whole thing and our viewers should just experience it. But what were your thoughts on the way that the big reveal happened? How the way things kind of progressed until we finally see the realization that Leonard is self-choosing his own victims, so to speak. What was your kind of reaction to the crescendo and as we got towards the ending of our film?
I really liked the ending. I thought that was... So, like, basically, we didn't trust Teddy this whole time, but then realizing that I think the twist was that Leonard himself was unreliable, where the whole movie we were really trusting everything he tattooed on himself, everything he was writing down, and then at the very end we realized, like, oh, he's kind of just picking his own victims. Like, oh, Teddy wronged me a little bit. I guess maybe, like, Teddy probably did bring him to the actual killer of his wife. And I do kind of believe Teddy might have been a dirty cop, but also the cop that might have been assigned to his case, and then he met him through there and then manipulated him to kind of do his dirty work for him. But then Teddy makes the mistake of telling Leonard basically his whole scheme, because he just thinks, oh, you're not going to remember it in 2 minutes. But Leonard steams off and just like writes it all down, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to convince myself that this guy is my next enemy, the guy that probably killed my wife. And then, that's when we meet Natalie, and she realizes she can manipulate him too. And I don't know if that license... Well, I think the license plate was real. It did say John Gamble on it, but she steers him towards killing Teddy too. And I think what we get is that this guy is going to be on a never-ending path of vengeance, trying to find the next person to kill every time after he kills somebody. And obviously, the very first scene in the film, he kills Teddy. So, like, after that, he's probably going to get set on to kill somebody else. Maybe Natalie will figure out somebody else for him to kill. It's just a never-ending pit of vengeance. And I think that's kind of like the big message, I would say, of the film is that, well, one, memory is extremely unreliable. Like, we have that quote, memory can change the shape of a room or the color of a car. It's an interpretation, not a record. So, like, when we think back to even our childhood memories, it's like an interpretation. We don't know for sure everything that happened was real, but, like, that's how we just interpreted it. But also, I think that once people cross into the path, they cross onto a path of vengeance and they get a taste of vengeance, I don't think they can ever stop, because I think at that point they're kind of irretrievably broken. Like, once you make the choice to kill somebody, you can kind of never come back. This film is kind of like saying that these people that go on these paths of vengeance, they're never going to get that feeling like I'm happy with how things are. I'm happy that the person that killed my wife actually is dead. Like, I think that they just keep going because anger has consumed them. And I think that's kind of the big point of the film.
Cole, we get the weird snap the picture in time where we see Leonard laying with his wife on his chest, and he has a tattoo over his heart that says, I did it, or I finished it, or I completed it, or something along those lines. What does that scene signify? Does that scene actually happen? Is that a figment of his imagination? It just seemed totally against what the film was trying to tell us as reality, but nothing seems real either in this film. So what were your interpretations on that? And Eric, you can answer too if you have an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was just his kind of what he was hoping to achieve, in a way that getting the revenge and tattooing that, he would get his wife back essentially, or he would find his peace. But I don't think that ever happened in reality. I think that was just a figment of his imagination, or a dream of him hoping to achieve. I do like the idea. I did see someone that had posted that said that scene did actually happen, but that was not his wife. He just thinks it's his wife, and that person is just pretending to be his wife. And that's like kind of his own self-made happiness. But I don't think that, I don't know if that necessarily lines up with how the film goes, or how I saw it.
Eric, what do you think?
That's really interesting. You might say that he might not even have a dead wife, and the whole end of this film is kind of saying, well, we can't even trust this guy's memories, but then I guess you would have to ask, what's the point of telling this whole story? And I guess it's just to say memories are kind of meaningless. But I agree with Cole, though. Like, it's super interesting to think about how the little snippets that Nolan put throughout this film, maybe they all just kind of don't mean anything. And yeah, it's just a big mind fuck in the end. So
I think that's probably right, to be honest with you. Let's wrap this up here. Eric, you had talked about your thoughts that revenge is a main theme. I'd like to argue that there's memory, consequences of revenge, deception, grief, self-deception are all just as big of themes. Not to say that you would disagree with that statement, but revenge certainly is at the forefront with the action. Cole, what are your thoughts? What are the main themes of this film, and how do you think they were represented?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main theme of this film is memory, and how no one's memory is ever perfect or good or reliable, and then also revenge will lead you down a path that you yourself won't even believe, and sometimes can't accept or won't accept. I think it's just like put to the extreme with his like memory and what he's willing to do because he won't remember it. So I think that's kind of what I took from it, or my two big themes.
Yeah.
Eric, anything else you want to toss in on there?
No, yeah, I completely agree. It's about revenge and how it kind of leads you down a never-ending black hole of, horrible actions, I think. And yeah, the memory aspect, yeah, not real. I think memories aren't reliable, and there's always this question about Sammy Jenkins, and if the amnesia he was experiencing was just a mental thing as opposed to a physical thing. Maybe Leonard he did so much fucked up shit that he just somehow mentally went into this amnesia state so that it would make it okay for him to live with what he's done, or he just forgets what he's done. And I think that's also something Teddy says at the end, we all tell lies to ourselves to make ourselves feel better. And I think this film definitely has that theme flows throughout it, is kind of the lies we tell to ourselves so that we can keep living a happy life of some sort. So
absolutely, yeah. It's his own choice. It's Leonard's own choice to forget. He lies to himself to be happy. His own choices are to blame for everything. His willingness to lie to himself perpetuates the cycle, and he's just constantly running from the truth. He doesn't want to know the truth. He's created something in his own mind, and then he's rationalized it too. He's quoted himself as saying, "How am I supposed to heal if I can't feel time?" And how the mention of his condition over and over, and the story of Sammy over and over. So he is and he mentioned conditioning too as part of the way he's more superior to Sammy's situation. So he certainly feels like he has gamed the system, when in reality, he's anything but it, and he's one step away from being a full-blown serial killer, which is just crazy in its own right. So, well, guys, anything else we want to throw in? Any nuggets of information, any Easter eggs, anything you wanted to tell the people about Memento before we get to our final reviews?
No, I don't think so. I do want to go back and watch this another time. Or I want to like really dig deep into the internet conspiracy theories and see if there's any little like shots that we can see. Something like what you said about he has a tattoo that says it's finished. I didn't even notice that. So like, yeah, that would lend towards this theory. Like, yeah, he did kill the person that he needed to, and maybe he is lying to himself to have a purpose in life. So I need to look at more of those internet conspiracy theories as well.
Right, or like the fact that Teddy was holding on to the original picture to hold it as a moment of usefulness against him at the right time when he was like losing control of him. And how long had this been going on? How many John G's were there since the original one? Like, questions for days. So now we're going to get to our final review. This is not an A24 film, but we're going to give it a review anyway, because god damn it, why not? We're here 24 years later, and this film is still getting talked to, so it certainly needs our 2 cents. Thank you for getting this far with us. Why don't you leave us a like and subscribe and a 5-star? Let's get this out of the way before our reviews, because then if you're not here at the end, we'll at least have said it already. So I'm going to start. I really enjoyed this film. I was kind of frustrated while watching it, but the moment that the credits rolled, I went, aha, I get it. That was really well done, and I dived into the internet for it to tell me more. I was excited to get to this discussion because I knew we were going to kind of touch on some things that made this film unique, and it definitely stands the test of time from a storytelling aspect and from a dialogue and script writing. Eric definitely touched on it. It's aged a little bit from the way that it was filmed, but the storytelling itself is certainly A-class, and is certainly something that a lot of film probably ascribes to be. And tries to stand up. There's a reason that we touched on this, why A24 films may not use this as inspiration, but certainly something that we can kind of see why they are connected one way or another. And I think that it's just because of the art and the artistry put into the storytelling itself. The actors all did a fine job. Christopher Nolan clearly hit a home run with this, and Hollywood took notice and gave him larger budgets to do bigger and better things. And we are better for it. We have gotten so many great films because of it. And I like to think that it definitely started right here with Memento. This movie is a cult classic for a reason. It's just altogether a great film. And if you can get past the timeline and you can kind of be patient with it and digest it for what it is, I think you'll really enjoy it. A24 for me. Cole, you're up.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I think this film is one that I would recommend pretty much everyone to watch. It's also one that lends itself to repeatability. So I honestly would recommend everyone to watch it at least twice and to really understand it. The story's fantastic. The way it's cut is very, very good. Some of the shortcomings Eric alluded to is just it just doesn't look very good, like from a visual aspect. There's nothing special about it. There's no like, beautiful cinematic shots or it's just, obviously it's a low budget. It's early 2000s, and I've talked about it. I think early 2000 movies, most of them just all look really weird and not good. They all have like a weird like desaturation. I don't know. There's something just off about them, and I think he fell into that trap mostly because of budget constraints and just the time. But otherwise, I think it's a fantastic film. Everyone should watch it. Definitely I think it fits well into the A24 catalog, and I'm going to give it an A24 as well.
All right, so I guess I didn't preface maybe like how I kind of want to grade this before everybody else did, but I kind of want to grade this on the Christopher Nolan scale of movies. So, like, okay, let's say Tenet's my least favorite Christopher Nolan film, and there's a bunch of people now like really, really loving Tenet for some odd reason. I liked it, but I probably my least favorite Nolan film, and then Oppenheimer is my favorite. So, like, let's say Tenet's a F, Oppenheimer's an A+. I think I would put this probably at a B+. So that's what I'll give it. And the reason is what Cole just said is just like, I don't think the cinematography is exactly that amazing in this film. The kind of Nolan, like the types of soundtracks that he uses and sound design he uses isn't exactly as evident in this film. It's kind of a director starting out trying to figure out the lens and auteurism that he wants to put on the film world. And, you know, we see all the themes in this film come back later in his career, in almost every film, actually. But, yeah, I think it's like he didn't exactly find his footing yet in this film. And I think still great, awesome story. And I love the non-linear timelines, I love the acting. But, you know, I think B+ is where I'd rate it on the big scale of Nolan films. So
all right,
that's
that's
where I'll
fair.
put it.
Like it's below Batman, it's below
Nolanverse.
Inception, it's below an Oppenheimer.
I mean, I think it's above Batman Begins, probably above Dark Knight Rises, below Dark Knight,
I see.
and then like
They're one unit for me. They're a collective, if you will.
Interstellar, Dunkirk, Oppenheimer, probably my top 3 favorites.
Yeah, I need to watch the rest of his library for sure.
Dunkirk's awesome, especially if you like war
good.
films too.
Yeah, I'm a fan, so I should probably go check that one out. Cool. Well, guys, I think that brings us to the end of it. So thank you, audience, for listening. If you've never seen Memento, I don't know why you're listening and why you're at this point, but go watch it. Go find it somewhere.
They're doing their own nonlinear timeline. They're listening to the podcast first.
Yep.
Yes. They just love us so much. that
Watching
they're
every
listening
single
to this.
A24 film, and then they're
And
gonna
then
watch
they
this, and then they're gonna
yeah.
watch The Thing, and then they're gonna watch The Exorcist. That's
Remember? Sandwiches.
Remember.
Oh, wait. Before we go, you know, want a cool Easter egg? There is a phone number written on the card for Teddy. And that phone number is the same phone number used for Marla in Fight Club.
Ooh. I definitely got some Fight Club kind of like feels in this. That makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
Also, something cool, like there's a lot of phone numbers in TV and film that if you actually call their real phone numbers, Better Call Saul has a ton of them. So, like, go look online on Reddit. They have like a whole list of phone numbers of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad phone numbers that you can actually call, and then you get like a like answering machine or something where you can leave a message. I think the Better Call Saul number is an actual real working number. So, yeah.
Well, how about
That's
that?
always
film
fun.
and TV. Yeah.
And if you have some Easter eggs that we didn't talk about, comment, leave it below. Send us a message. You want to be on our podcast? You can do that too. We're going to be here. All right. That's it. I'm done now. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Test this, you fucking quack.
A24 Vibe Discussion.